Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again for another weekly update on news and information about DCS World. I'm your host, of course, Prickly Hedgehog, and as always, I do hope this video finds you well, wherever you're tuning in from today. Now, speaking of today, you'll notice that the newsletter is a little bit earlier today, and that's because I am going to take some time off here and just have a break from work and also videos and video manufacturing and flying and stuff for DCS World. Just need a little refresher, if you like, a little hiatus before I come back. So this will be the only video I'm producing this weekend. I'm always cooking something, but I'm going to take a little break just to recharge the batteries, like I said, so hence the earlier newsletter time. Now, we have a shorter newsletter from Eagle Dynamics this week, and this is in part probably because of the big patch last week, so there's less to report on. Nonetheless, there's some interesting things to talk about. But moving away from that, we're going to come back to this in a second, but the big news for me this week was seeing the A7e Corsair 2 Q4 development update from Flying Iron Simulations. Now, this will be an exciting topic for quite a few of you. Obviously, a Cold War jet that has been cooking in that stable for some time. We haven't heard anything about the aircraft for a while, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it is, but it's not necessarily a bad thing always. Just studios get busy, and especially smaller studios like this, they have a lot of stuff going on, and it takes time to build up newsletters and also have information available that you feel comfortable releasing, so on and so forth. Speaking of smaller studios, Razbam 2 have some more images for us for the F-15, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But let's start with kind of the housekeeping stuff from Eagle Dynamics and that change log, which came about as a result probably from the prior patch, just some corrections there primarily that we're looking at today. So the Halloween sale for Steam is still going on. That's going to go until the 1st of November. So don't forget to pick up discounts of up to 50% and pad out your collection of items for DCS World. The Halloween sale for the eShop is also going on. That's going to run through till the 3rd of November, so a few days after the Steam one. And again, like I always say, gather ye aircraft and gather ye maps while ye may, because this is the last weekend you can do that. Now, as mentioned, we have some more development progress on the Apache, focused here on, again, more aesthetic stuff, which in this case, of course, is the flight suits and the equipment that the pilots are wearing in the aircraft. So this is a new model for Eagle Dynamics, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that they've gone to a lot of work to update this, especially because the helmets are particularly important for the Apache, and those feature different equipment than perhaps what we see in the jets, and also what the pilots are carrying as well. So they've done some nice modeling here, which you should be looking at some of those images. These progress renders basically show the complete model as an aircrew combat uniform, or A2CU, and it has the Nomex flight gloves, the Belleville flight boots, and the Gen 3 PSGC Aircrew Warrior Survival Vest harness. Again, development, work in progress development here, but this is what we can expect to see, at least in function, if not in final rendered form. So some cool stuff there, and as I said, they've gone to a lot of trouble on this aircraft to really do it justice in terms of accuracy and also aesthetic appeal. So stay tuned for more on that. As I said, it is a new model for the pilots, and I believe they're doing work also on some of the other models as well to make them a little bit more realistic, so stay tuned on that one. Now, they also have some merchandise here. They have teamed up with Spring, apparently, to bring us the first ever line of DCS merchandise, and all of the drawings, apparently, all the designs have been hand-drawn by their own artists, and you're looking at the F-16 one right now, so pretty cool. I've always wondered about merchandise, and I like the DCS symbol. I think it's kind of cool, and this is a nice way to kind of show your swag, if you like, and maybe if you're out and about, connect with other DCS pilots, because sometimes that happens. You're like, hey, you're a DCS fan, which is kind of fun. Anyway, let's move now to the A7e Corsair. Well, let's turn our attention here to one of our third-party developers, which is Flying Iron Simulations. They are working on the DCS A7e Corsair 2. The Q4 development update report that they provided to us is pretty extensive, so I'm going to summarize it, but it does bode very well. In very, very broad terms, the aircraft has had a lot of work on the flight modeling, and they're also working very hard on the avionics systems as well, including the RWR systems that are in the aircraft. In broad terms, again, we're moving basically from phase 2 of the development progress to phase 3 of 4. So that gives you kind of a broad ballpark, of the development process. Now, they've pulled in subject matter experts. This is A7 pilots to help them with things like extreme envelope performance, stalls and spins. And they've done a lot of work on CFD software data gathering, and they've pulled in companies like FlightStream and also Darcorp to help them capture flight data used in the external flight modeling development, which is good news. Basically, the software allows them to calculate aerodynamic forces over any range of flight conditions. So it's pretty critical, obviously, when you don't have an actual aircraft to fly. Plus, you can then pull in the subject matter experts to help you fine-tune that. So essentially, that's what's going on right now. But the work that they've been doing on the external flight model, they're very, very happy with. They basically are telling us they have a base model to work with right now. Now, they are adding in some, again, fine-tuning. This includes the integration of the aerodynamic models for the landing gear and the trailing edge flaps, with work that is ongoing to integrate the leading edge flaps and the inboard roll spoilers. Now, they've done a lot of work on the drag modeling, which has been improved a lot, and they have a focus here on mark corrections and improvements in the transonic range. They've also been updating the TF41 engine modeling to have better calculations for thrust, and more accurate spooling delays have been implemented, which is pretty cool. As I said, they've got the subject matter experts working on edge of envelope performances as well. Really, really cool stuff. Now, if you're not familiar with the Corsair in its later stages, it did include a RWR that will be familiar with us, or should be familiar to you, and that is the ALR67 radar warning receiver, and this was used with the ALR45F display. Now, the ALR67 is also used in the FA-18 and also the F-14B, as well as many other Western aircraft, and that's why you may be familiar with that. So a nice piece of equipment there that we'll be able to use, and it kind of is a nice little bridge between this older aircraft and some of the newer technology that was put into it. So I think it's going to be quite an interesting aircraft to fly, even though it's a Cold War jet. It's no slouch. It was obviously superseded at some point, but it's going to be a nice addition to the F-14 and also hopefully down the road the A6 Intruder from Heat Blur as well. Now, they are working on the heads-up display. They have a placeholder HUD right now, and that served them well, but over the next few weeks, apparently they're going to continue development of the full HUD simulation, and they're also developing the ANAVQ7B VHUD, which was installed on the A7E's airframe change number 390. I'm not sure what period that was in that development, but nevertheless, an interesting addition to this aircraft and how it's going to function. The HUD is also capable of operating in night mode in conjunction with the forward-looking infrared radar system, or FLIR, and when in night mode, the HUD symbology is combined with video feed from the FLIR to create a composite display on the HUD that provides excellent night vision. So some pretty sophisticated stuff again for this aircraft. So they are hoping to work over the next few weeks on the basic nav modes and then start moving into the fun stuff, as they've described it here, which is the CCIP and the CCRP. This aircraft obviously excelled in bombing missions. So again, it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, this is pretty sophisticated again for this aircraft, for this vintage. It also has a projected map display system, or PMDS, and it's well past the halfway point in development, apparently. All the basic modes and functionalities have been modeled accurately, and this works by projecting film strips onto the display, with the film strips being scrolled and rotated to reflect the aircraft's heading and position. So it's older technology, not dissimilar to what we saw, if you like, in the Hind. And it's comprised, though, of photographs of aeronautical charts at 2 scales, 1.5K and 1.2 million. This gave the PMIDs 2 scale settings equating to approximately a 10 nautical mile radius on the display and a 50 nautical mile radius on the display. There is a data mode where spare film on the film strips could be used to store flight data and procedures for the pilot to view when needed. So yeah, older technology, but kind of nice when you compare it to not having that with some of the older jets in that vintage, if you like. So the basic modes and functionality of the PMIDs is modeled, and they're hoping to move into more advanced features over the coming weeks and months, including slew functionality, manual hold operation, mark point saving, as well as completing the visual and art elements of the display, such as the texture, glass, and model, etc. Again, this is pretty cool stuff, and even simple things like this still require quite a lot of work, and you hopefully are looking at pictures here of what we're referencing. Again, pretty cool. Now, this forward-looking radar that we mentioned is designed for ground mapping, air-to-ground ranging and weapons delivery, beacon operation, and terrain avoidance. The dynamic range of the display allows it to be dimmed sufficiently for night ops, and it has 11 modes of operation. They are as follows: beacon, terrain avoidance, ground map, pencil, ground map spoiled, air-to-GE or air-to-ground ranging, air-to-air ranging, combined terrain following and terrain avoidance, combined terrain following and ground mapping, terrain following, Shrike improved display, and television display. The television display can be used to guide optical weapons such as the walleye, and again, they're pretty happy with the work on the radar system, and it is some work in progress shots that you're looking at here, just basically as a proof of concept testing. They are using the ground radar API developed by ED, which so far has been excellent. It works well for the Corsair. So again, these are just a proof of concept, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be modeled yet. So the artwork is also ongoing. They've got pretty sparse images they're telling us here, but stay tuned because more work. They actually apparently added 2 additional artists, and apparently that has been really helpful to them to complete and update their 3D models, etc., etc. So again, this is very, very promising. I'm excited about this aircraft, and it's going to be interesting to see the final product, I think. Again, I think it's a useful stable in the era that we have with the Forrestal aircraft carrier, the F-14, of course, which is already in game, and again, once we see this A6. So there's some really cool things going on in that vintage of aircraft. Of course, the F-14 went on a little bit longer than the Corsair, obviously, and I forget off the top of my head when it was pulled out of service. I think it was in the 90s, I think, and I forget exactly when. Somebody might be able to help me out there. Lastly, just to wrap this up, the Phase 4, if you like, or the roadmap for moving into Phase 4, basically is a functional and flyable external flight model, low-mid fidelity, key analog gauges integrated for testing, core systems modeled and integrated. We're talking here electrical, fuel, hydraulic, etc. Basic functionality of the HUD, including nav mode, pylons and loadout setups, AI SFM integrated, and key clickable switches integrated. So Phase 3 is now in progress, and that is really interesting. Many milestones apparently are tracking very well, and they are very, very pleased with the work. And I have to say, I was quite impressed. It's been quiet. I was getting a little worried that they were working on the Microsoft products more, and I was wondering if this was kind of languishing. But that's not been the case at all, which I think is very nice to know. So thank you, Flying Irons, for putting up that detailed roadmap for us and the detailed progress report. It's been nice to see, and I'm sure the aircraft will be well received in the game, so keep it coming. Let me know what your thoughts are on this aircraft. I'm very, very excited about it, as you can tell, and we'll see what the future brings. Alright, well that pretty much wraps up this week's newsletter. I'm going to take a break for a few days, but don't forget to put your comments in the comment section below on any of the things you want to discuss here. I'll keep monitoring from time to time and chime in where I can. I'm going to leave you with a couple of images, of course, from RASBAM here, and we're seeing, I guess, an increase in frequency on the number of pictures we're seeing from RASBAM on the F-15, and we also saw some nice showcase images of the South Atlantic map here once more with G. Skouras' beautiful cinematic from a recent video this week as well. So something's cooking there. We could see some sort of announcement here, I wonder. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, I'll update you as soon as I can. And rounding out, of course, this week's news, don't forget to check out the video from Airgas on the Mirage F1. They're telling us here that the aircraft is going to be available for early access very, very soon. We don't have a specific date, but that is also promising news. So again, put your comments in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're a new person to the channel. It helps the channel chug along. And again, I really, really appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.